and something like that. I feel it in my butt, so I'm gonna be sore tomorrow.
Okay. Just in time. Hi, Scott. You will need something to stick into your shoulder for the first little bit. And then you can grab a can or something light. You'll need 2 things that are about the same weight that are light. We're just gonna do some shouldery stuff today. Focusing. Great. Yeah, I'm using something that's about 2 pounds, but lighter is not bad. You probably don't need to go much heavier than that. A rolled up towel or a blanket is good to have as a backup. We won't need it for a ton today. And then something to dig into your shoulder. We're going to start with our traps. So lying down on your back. You're going to place whatever your torture device is behind the top of your shoulder. So you're going for the meaty part here at the top where most of us can pinch. And let's start in right close to the base of our neck. So we're on the top of our shoulder and the side of our neck. Once you're there, you're going to push your hips up so that more of your weight digs into whatever you're using to release your neck. And then you're going to move your arm up overhead. So we're reaching our arm overhead, back down, and then out to the side and in. And you'll just do 5 of each. And once you've done that, you're going to move the ball out towards your shoulder a little bit or whatever you're using to massage, and then do the same thing. So we're just getting rid of some tension in your upper trap. So the first spot will be about here. And you should be able to find one in the middle. And then we'll do one more on kind of the outside edge here. 3 spots, kind of 5 times through this little sequence here. Some of these points can be quite tender and nasty. So if you want to reduce the pressure, just lower your hips a little bit. So once you've done those 3 spots, you'll move on to the other side. No rush though. Just right at the edge of the shoulder. So you got inside, like right near the neck, middle, and then right by that edge. Yeah. So still not on a bone though. Yeah. Yeah. So once you've done your first side, moving on to the other one, just to remind you, starting right in close to your neck to start. Then you'll go towards the middle. And then that last spot is right out at the edge by your shoulder, but still not on any bone. So what we're doing here is we're just taking some of the tone out of our upper traps because we're going to do some shoulder kind of range of motion, proper rhythm kind of stuff today to get everything sort of moving in a better pattern. Once you're done both sides, you can just sit up in whatever position is comfortable for you. So we're gonna look at how we want our shoulder to function in an ideal world. And there's a few things we need for that. The first one is we need our rib cage to be more or less stable. So that doesn't mean it's locked off. It's still gonna be moving when we inhale and exhale, but it does mean that we don't want it to be lifting instead of having our shoulder move. So I talk a lot in these classes about a little button here and keeping the button closed. This will be a common theme this class as well. And what a stable rib cage gives us is a surface for our shoulder blade to move on so that our arm bone can stay cradled in the socket as we move it. So when your arm moves, your shoulder blade needs to move a little bit as well. And one of the common things that we have happen is either the blade doesn't move because it's really tight, or our blade and our ribs move, which means that that also changes the hole that the arm bone is supposed to sit in. Or the shoulder blade will move, but not quite in the right direction. So the reason that we release the traps is because a lot of us, our tendency is to hike the shoulder blade first and then move the arm, which just means that you've got the head of your shoulder is just not really sitting in its perfect little socket, because the joint here is actually just made up of several moving structures. So your collarbone, which moves, your shoulder blade, which moves, and it kind of makes its own cup there, unlike the hip socket, which its cup is much more solid. So the point of all that rambling is that there's a ton of moving parts, and we're going to try and get them all to work together today. So the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to get our T-spine a little bit more open. A lot of us are tight through the front. When you're tight through the front, it's very hard to keep your ribs stable because it's really attached to your arm. So anytime you move it, it feels like it has to move too. So we're just going to start with some rotation because that's the easiest way to get some of that tightness out of your T-spine. You can lie on one side. If you want to have a pillow under your head or a towel, you can. We're just going to go through some side lying rotation, but we're going to include our arms this time. So you're going to inhale your arm up. As you do that, I want you to reach your fingertips to the ceiling as much as possible. So I'm trying to reach up as much as possible. Then I'm going to exhale and I'm going to twist and think about reaching behind me as far as I can. I'm going to inhale to stay, exhale to stay, inhale to stay, and exhale. I'm reaching up, 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 up with the fingertips to come back to close. So inhaling up, I'm really reaching up to the ceiling. Exhale to twist. Inhale to stay, still reaching long. Exhale to stay. Inhale to stay. And exhale, reaching up over the top to close. Reaching the arm up on the inhale. Exhale to rotate. Inhale to stay. Exhale to stay. Inhale to stay. And exhale to close. We're going to switch to a new one now. So staying on the same side, you're going to reach your arm up over your head. So it's going to sweep up over your head. And whenever it feels like you want your ribs to rotate, just let them rotate. So up over your head, you're rotating. Then you're going to swing the arm around behind your back. And then we're going to reverse it. So it's going out and over, back to the start. So coming up, let yourself rotate when you need to. your arm's gonna come around your back, and then it's just tucking here. Then you're gonna reverse it, reach the arm out and around, back over the top to close. I don't tend to cue breathing on this one because there's a lot of other stuff going on. If you feel clicking, popping, pinching, please reduce the range of motion. So I have very mobile shoulders, but this whole thing can be done much smaller, right? This is fine too. So stay in the range that is pain-free and click-free. And we'll just do, let's do 5 total, and then you'll flip over and we'll do the same series on the other side. So this is just giving you an idea of your arm, your shoulder blade, your rib cage, all working together at the same time. It also feels really nice. So once you've done 5, you can flip over to the other side, and we'll start with that side lying rotation. So hands start stacked. You're gonna reach up to the ceiling as high as you can on the inhale. Exhale, you're gonna rotate back, reaching for the wall behind you. Inhale to stay. Exhale to stay. Inhale to stay. And exhale. Up and over the top to close. So really exaggerate that reach. Remember, your knees want to be at about 90 degrees. Inhaling the arm up, reaching really high. Exhale, you're going to twist, reaching for the wall behind you. Inhale to stay. Exhale to stay. Inhale to stay. And exhale, think of reaching up with the arm to come over the top to close. Last one. Inhaling up. Reach, 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 reach. Exhale to twist. Inhale to stay. Exhale to stay. Inhale to stay. And exhale up and over the top to close. So we'll switch to the arm sweep. So you'll do 5 coming up over your head. Allow your rib cage to roll whenever it wants to. Arm comes around the side, wraps behind your back, and then you're reversing to reach out, up and over the top to close. Remember to stay in a click-free range, so keep it smaller if you want. This is one of my favorite ones for either recovering from a workout that was heavy on the overhead stuff or preparing to do something that involves a lot of, say, overhead press, or if you're doing chin-ups, anything with hanging, which obviously I do a lot of. This is a really nice way to kind of open up your T-spine and get your shoulder joints woken up. Once you've done that, you're going to come to a seated position again. And we're just gonna bring some more awareness, and this is another fun grumpy shoulder exercise, to the relationship between your shoulder blade and your rotator cuff. So you're going to reach across and find your shoulder blade on one side. So what you're looking for is, you'll probably find the bony part at the top easiest, which will run just below that muscle we were releasing at the beginning of class. If you walk your fingers down and then shrug your shoulder around, and you should start to feel a bony kind of spine, kind of horizontally along this area. So everybody kind of got something in there? Good. So you don't need to hold it, just put your hand on your back so that you have a reference for it. The other arm is going to come out to the side. From here, you're going to roll the whole arm forward far enough that your blade shifts too. So I'm thinking everything rolls forward, everything rolls back. We're really going to exaggerate it. We'll do 5 here. So this is your shoulder blade moving with your arm. Once you've done 5, you're going to hold that arm out. Think of keeping your blade still and just see about how far your arm can rotate without your shoulder blade moving. So this is much less. And this is an isolation of your rotator cuff, right? So your rotator cuff's job is to rotate the arm and also to keep it in your socket. Once you've done 5 there, we're gonna hold the upper arm bone, your humerus, and your blade still. And we're just gonna do some pronation, supination. So this is rotation of your lower arm bone here. This is the hardest one for me anyways. So just 5 there. Once you've done that 5, you're gonna add back in your humerus. So now we're returning to our whole arm rotating, but our blade staying still. 5 there. And then finally 5 where you're adding that blade in at the end. So what we're noticing here is that these parts can work together to get the most range possible, or you can choose to isolate them and hold your joint stable. So when you're looking at things like the very top point in an overhead press, if you wanted to turn your weight out, your blade would stay in the same place, but your arm could rotate, right? A lot of the time we do this and it just kind of feels horrible after a while. So let's switch over to the other side, doing the same thing. You're finding your blade, arm is out to the side. And we're doing 5 of those big rolls, bringing your blade into the picture. Bear in mind, I have a lot of range in my joints. Once you've done 5, you're gonna hold that shoulder blade still. And we're just twisting our arm. Once you've done 5 there, you're gonna hold your blade and your top arm bone still, and we're just doing that lower arm. And then we're gonna add back in your humerus. And your shoulder blade. This next part will be easiest from a half kneeling or a standing position. So either here or standing, whatever feels better for you. And we're just gonna do some arm circles. So we're gonna start by reaching forward, and your goal is to sweep your arm forward and imagine your shoulder blades coming forward a little bit too. So if you reach across your torso and you just place your hand on the outside of one of your armpits, as you reach forward, you wanna feel a little bit of that blade sliding along the side of your body, right? So, and then as it comes up, your blade is going to continue to rotate up. So envisioning that happening on both sides, blade sweeping up, rotating, and then having your arms come around the side. So now your blades are back down. So sweeping forward, 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 then rotating up, out and around. Stay in a click free range. We're just gonna do 2 more. Really reaching forward, out and around. For the last, actually we'll do 2 more starting now. I want you to start paying attention to this rib button. So you're only allowed to raise your arms as far as your ribs stay dropped down. So for most of us, that means the range is gonna really change, right? Yes, nice. So up, really thinking, keeping your ribs down instead of this here. Which I'm very good at demonstrating wrong. Nice. After you've done that, again, you can do the standing or kneeling. It's up to you. You're going to grab your little weights and we're going to do a little kind of shoulder blade warm up, rotator cuff warm up thing. So you're going to start by just doing teeny tiny circles out at the side. So right now my arm is doing a circle, but my blade is still because my arm hasn't moved that much. We're going to start to creep up, out to the side, which means your shoulder blades will start to follow through. And you're just going to work your way up to overhead, continuing the circles, continuing dropping your ribs down to the floor as far as is comfortable for you. So you might not make it all the way overhead, that's fine. And then you're going to come back down. So you're going to try doing this with the circles going one way And then you're going to switch directions and do the same thing. Again, this is another really great warm up for any kind of overhead work. And your goal is to have the arm bone doing the circles, and all your blade is doing is supporting when your arm moves. Excellent. So you can drop one of the weights for now, and we're going to go through a couple of these classic rotator cuff exercises that most physios give out. So I find it helpful to once again find my shoulder blade with one hand. This is just as a reminder. So you're going to want to try and get your blade flat on your back if you can. So for most of us, that means we're just going to do a little bit of a shrug and try and settle the blade out from the spine a bit. If this is really confusing and you can't get it flat, don't worry. You just mostly want it still. So once you've got an idea of your blade, you're going to hold the weight up at a 90-degree angle here, and then you're going to rotate it out and back in. But the rule is that your shoulder blade must stay still. So this is an isolation of your rotator cuff. We're just going to do 6. But your shoulder blade should not be moving in response. I'm exaggerating, but honestly, a lot of the time when we're given these exercises, this is how we do them. And instead, what you want to envision is this arm bone just spinning in space while everything else is still. 6 on one side, and then you'll switch, do 6 on the other. You can see I cannot go as far on this side. It's fine. I'll see my physio later today. She will fix everything. Once you've done 6, we're going to come into a hands and knees position. And again, you'll just need one weight. So the supporting arm on this exercise, you want to have pushing into the floor. You also want to close that rib button I talked about. So it's almost like the lowest part of your ribs is reaching up to the ceiling a little bit. You're going to take the weight in one hand. Think about keeping your neck long. You're going to pull your elbow out to the side, and then you're going to rotate it up and back down. So from the front, I'm here, pulling the elbow up, rotating the weight, and back down. And again, the same rule applies, where it should just be your arm bone shifting. So if you notice that you're rotating through your ribs, or it feels like you're squeezing your spine with your blade, just reduce the range a bit. We'll just do 5 per side. So this is starting to get our rotator cuff working with our arm out to the side a bit more. Yeah, good correction, Scott, with the ribs. It's a really easy one to collapse through the center. I probably cheated when I did it. Yeah. And don't force it. So for all of these, you don't want to be shoving into pinching or pain or clicking. Might mean that your range starts really, really small, and that's fine. Especially if you have a history of any kind of frozen shoulder stuff. Okay, so you can put the weight off to the side for a minute, and we're just going to go into a stretching break. Hooray! I never give you stretches. Starting in a hands and knees position, or rather in, let's call this whatever, partial push-up position. There we go. So my knees are behind my hips, just so you can see. Yep. You're going to push your hands into the floor and think about lifting that button between your ribs up to the ceiling as you shift your hips back. And you're only going to go as far as you can keep that button lifted. Here we're going to hold for 3 breaths. And then you're going to shift forward again And then we'll repeat that 3 times. So as I push, I'm really lifting the button in between the front of my ribs up and back towards my hips. And what we're going for is you're potentially eventually going to feel a stretch on the outside of your armpit here in your lats. Yeah, so once you feel that stretch, you're going to hold for 3 breaths, then come back in. And we'll do that for 3 times. And remember to think of that push away first. So the push away from the floor is going to get that blade to sweep forward a little bit as you do this. Yeah. So you probably won't be able to go very far once you do everything at the same time. Okay, so once you've done 3, you're going to walk your hands to one side slightly. So this is going to put the emphasis on one shoulder more than the other. Your other arm, so the one that is not as extended, can bend at any time. Everything else is the same. So I'm pushing back and I'm lifting my ribs up to the ceiling as I sit my hips to my heels. But now that I've made a curve on that side, it's going to shift the stretch a little bit higher up for me and kind of a bit more intensely. So this is good if you've got quite uneven shoulders or just to get an idea of opening into that side space. So again, we'll do 3 breaths here. And then you're going to come forward and I'll show you from the front. So one hand is across a little bit and a little bit makes a big difference. I'm pulling my ribs up to the ceiling as I sit back into the C. So this is a variation on that child's pose with a C reach. Holding for 3 breaths, coming back in. It's just a tiny bit more active and the emphasis is on our lats a bit more. So 3 on one side, then 3 on the other. And stay really strict with those cues. So it's very easy to pop through the front of our ribs for this one, and we don't want to do that. Yeah. So it's like if somebody has a belt under your ribs, they're pulling that back to lift up and back. And again, that other arm can just bend whenever it needs to. Okay, so we're going to get into, now that we've opened up some new range, we're going to do some strengthening through it. So if your knees don't like being in child's pose for a while, you can take a towel and place it in the crease so that you're not having to be in that much flexion. This is totally optional. It's just we've spent a fair amount of time on our knees today, so I wanted to throw that out there. You're going to start in a child's pose with your hands out to the side and think about pressing into the floor lightly with your hands. From here, you're going to slide your hands up overhead, and then as they come back down, you're going to think of pressing them into the floor again. This mat is really annoying. Marie, I would recommend almost going on the floor because this mat gets in the way. So I'm actually going to, because it's the wrong wind. There we go. So hands are out to the side, forehead on the floor, wishing I vacuumed already. You're going to slide your hands up as far as you can, and then back down, grabbing the mat as you go. So I'm really pressing into the floor, sliding up, sliding down. And you want to keep your ribs lifted towards the ceiling like you did in the previous exercise. So that may mean that you're not able to, go as far. And the other thing, which is going to make this so much less fun, is you want to think of pulling your elbows towards the center as they go overhead. So they start here, they're going to do this on the pathway. So my elbows are coming together and then back out. See if you can get your ribs lifted a bit more, Murray. Yeah, you want to lift the middle of your ribs up. Yeah.
I can put my head down. Like this.
You can put your head down, but you just lost control of your ribs. It's very hard. Yeah. So if you're noticing that your ribs are popping early, just stay in the range where you can keep them stable. I have quite a open shoulder joint, so I'm able to go through this. See if you can if you drop your hips way back, Murray, to your heels. Yes. And then lift your rib. Yeah. Try it from there. That looks better to me. Yeah. That's what I needed to say. And then particularly as your right arm,
I get a huge pinch. there.
yeah. So as your right arm comes up, what's happening right now is this. See how I'm lifting blade and then arm? So keep it smaller and think of just your arm moving, and you will want to pull it in because right now you're quite open here. So think about pulling it into the floor or into your center line. Yeah, and stop about there for now and then come back. Yeah, just because that side, you're lifting your shoulder blade first. So try not to shrug your shoulders up. Yeah, and now they'll follow through. So shoulder stays down, now your shoulder's gonna follow. Yeah, does that feel better?
Slightly.
Yeah. Okay, we'll give that one a break. And we've got one more strengthening exercise you will need your little weights for. And we're just gonna do, we're not gonna do circles, but we'll do similar to the circles we did at the beginning. So you can do this in kneeling or standing. You're gonna reach your arms forward. So you're thinking of getting your shoulder blades to spread open on your back, reaching the weights up, and you're gonna bring them as far overhead as you can while keeping your ribs down. Then you're gonna lower, and we're just gonna do 8. So be really strict about your ribs and really focus on that reach forward first. So that reach forward is helping your shoulder blade go from where it starts to sweep forward and up, which is what allows our arm to go overhead. Yeah, but if you don't have the forward and you just have the up, you're going to get pinching, which is what was happening in the other exercise, right? That looks much better for you though. Good. Can't remember how many I said. I think only 8. Once you're done 8,